Welcome to RGBA, colorful tech news and reviews. This is episode 89. My name is Alexandre Vallière-Lagacé, and I'm joined by my co-host, Tade Ménard. Let's start with a bit of follow-up. So we discussed the failing Apple keyboards on the most recent 2016 and 2017 MacBook Pros. And if you remember correctly, I mentioned at one point that if the failure rate is double what it is, let's say it's in the low percentage for the 2015 model, let's say like 2, 3, 4, 5%. And if it's double the percentage, then it's a big problem. And right after the show was recorded, we got a news from Apple Insider sporting data from inside Apple. So there's some leaker there that leaked the actual numbers of units with defects. And the 2015 model had 5.6% failure rate for the keyboard. If you move to the 2016 model, the one with the new butterfly switch keyboard, super thin, super clicky, well, this 5.6% raises to 11.4%. So in Apple terms, it's a 103% increase in failure rates for this specific keyboard. So I don't know what the outcome for that. I don't know if somebody from Apple was pissed that this was not taken care of properly, or that maybe the management said, it's okay, it's still close to 10%, we don't care, whatever. And they leaked the information to the press. But basically, we have this number, which confirms that it's at least a double failure rate for those bad keyboards.
I'm still out of warranty and crossing my fingers that my keyboard doesn't fail, or if it does fail, that I don't have problems getting a replacement, or it doesn't cost like $500 like people have been quoted. But other than that, I don't know. I hope they change it, but I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. I don't even think they're going to address it at like WWDC or whenever they release the new like the new laptops or updated laptops. I think it's just they're never going to talk about it.
Yeah, there's no marketing edge that you can spin this and say, we had something, now it's much better. Because what you had was bad. It's not that it was good and now it's better. It was that it's bad and now it's better. So you cannot spin this in any positive way. So like you said, they won't mention it. They might tell us that there's a new keyboard design, but they won't say that the old one was crap. So, and for your personal MacBook Pro, the only thing we can hope is that once Apple releases this summer the new keyboard and that it's different, they might come out with a extended warranty for the keyboards for your model, so that you can get maybe 2 years or 3 years on the keyboard separately from the machine. That could be, I guess, the best outcome. But will Apple be exposed to lawsuits because they agree that this keyboard has problems? I don't know exactly the extent of the law on that part. Like, for example, that's why like cities or officials never like excuse themselves from doing a bad behavior or doing a bad decision, because they are now exposing themselves to lawsuits. I don't know if it's the same way with commercial products, but anyways, let's hope for the best. And up until now, your keyboard is safe. Mine is too. So let's keep our fingers crossed for a little bit more time.
Fingers crushed.
Crushed, yeah. What episode was this one?
Oh, I don't know. It was so long ago.
Yeah. All right. So moving on to what we finally heard about Texture, the iPad magazine service app that Apple acquired a couple months ago. We heard nothing about it since then, but now we have the very first tidbit of news. The Texture app for Windows will be shutting down. So it's going to be an Apple ecosystem, probably iPad only service and app from now on. So in June, Apple will pull the plug on this. So I'm not surprised. They purchased that company. They saw a value in it. They wanted this to be integrated into the product offering from their platforms. So they're cutting off other platforms. They have more to gain by doing that and keeping the whole ecosystem better than just making a few more bucks by going like open platform and supporting other platforms. For me, it's just a regular business.
Yeah, Texture was like this newspaper stand thing, I think, that they bought.
Yeah, magazine.
Okay, magazine stand. I didn't even remember.
Yeah, it's been there for a long time, and it's quite a good service if you read lots of magazines. So yeah, it makes sense that they acquired it. It was probably the leader of its field. Makes sense. So the last bit of follow up I have is I continue to think about this Apple AR and VR goggle thing, and I was wondering, why does the rumor say it's an 8K device, 8K screens per eyes, and you have like somebody else. I don't know if it was written in the rumor itself or somebody like deducted that it might be like wireless for AR while where you're up and about. But when you come back home, you might have like a Nintendo Switch kind of functionality, meaning that once you're close to the home device, whatever, then there's more processing power and therefore it becomes a VR headset. So I thought about that and I am thinking more and more that it makes sense. Imagine that Apple invented with Zeiss or whatever other company that they work with a kind of glass that has a screen embedded inside it, but when the pixels are off, they're transparent and not black. Okay? So if you're going up and about, you're outside and you're looking, let's say, for example, you're driving your car and you need the directions to get to the restaurant. And normally you take out your phone, but now you have your AR glasses. So you can see on the screen itself, not necessarily the whole display, the whole eye section, maybe just a little part, maybe a little half an inch in the middle or something, or in the corner, kind of like the Google Glass that they had, this little prism. So inside the glass, you would have a little screen that's a small screen, so it doesn't need too much power. You're not powering like an 8K display wirelessly. You're just powering some small screen. And in there, you can have the contextual information so that either the glasses themselves or the glasses paired with your phone are being powered and providing this information. But once you get home, now you're in the range of that living room device, be it the Apple TV or whatever else you can call it. Then, since you're closer and you have access to this much, much powerful device that is plugged in the wall, can consume 100 watts of CPU power, who cares? It's plugged in the wall. It's doing its magic. And now that little tiny screens become your whole peripheral vision, all becomes a big 8K screen. So that would be amazing. So that's probably a way to do light AR and strong VR in the same device. The technology there, the thing, the missing link, if you want, would be the pixels that once turned off are transparent. So that's probably why they worked with Zeiss. Maybe they had something in-house. Maybe they defined something together. But nonetheless, for me, this is the only way that I can see a single device being AR and VR compatible at the same time. You don't want 8K screens powered by your glasses when you're up and about, because the battery will last 5 minutes. And even if we do, let's say, triple the battery life we have now in 2020, you'd still get only a few minutes of playtime. So that makes absolutely no sense. So for me, up and about is AR. And if you're inside close to your TV or whatever that box or device is, then you're going to be in VR mode. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just I can't wait to see like an actual thing that's useful for me in VR. Or I never tried it also, so maybe it's super cool even to play games and I'd start playing games, but right now I don't see a use for VR.
Yeah, well, VR is an experience where you're isolated from the outside world. So it's not necessarily something that you play with your kids or you play with your friends. It's something that you play basically alone and connected to the internet to have other buddies playing. So right now, I feel it's still at the experience level. Like, let's try VR. Let's try something in VR. Let's try to have, I don't know, like vertigo by looking down a precipice or something. That's the kind of thing you can do right now. There's a few games, of course, but are they full-fledged games that are making this an equivalent experience to regular gaming? I don't think so. It's still different. It's still in your own little world by yourself. So it's still not social, still not the way people play games. So there's still work to be done on that part. The AR part, though, I can understand, especially in cars where you need where you want minimum distractions. Having the AR glasses or device, whatever, even just a HUD is great just to tell you exactly where to turn, go around, and stuff like that. So that makes sense. Maybe if you plug this to a personal CRM where you can enter data from your peers, and whenever somebody walks up to you, you have his name or her name displayed right next to him or her, so you know exactly those person. Because if you forget names like me, for example, and now I know you, but I don't know what your name is. But now, bloop, he would pop up, and his name is Christian. So that's easy. So that's the kind of thing that can easily become very good. I don't know if you saw, I probably should put it in the show notes too. There was a post yesterday from The Verge on Microsoft and what they're preparing for the workplace. So with Cortana, listening in your meetings, like imagine your Amazon Echo in a meeting room. And then when somebody says, I'll follow up on this, then Cortana recognizes the voices and adds to that person's to-do list a follow-up item. So the kind of interaction that normally occurs in meetings, but Cortana is there to be that assistant that takes notes, does the minutes, and makes sure that everybody knows what to do after the meeting. So it's pretty smart. So I can see that this device kind of becomes the same thing, but has a smart, context-aware device giving you a lot more information that is very specific and required at this precise moment.
Right, because it's Microsoft Build right now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Their conference is, I think it just launched, and they did their keynote, and they had the interview last week, but they were only allowed to post it yesterday, right after the keynote. So now everybody knew about the features, but they had like exclusive with Satya Nadella and a couple more people from the business group.
And it's also Google I/O this week?
Already? Wasn't it June? No, I think you're right. It's May. Yeah. Should be soon.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's today or like tomorrow.
Jeez, time flies. All right, so moving on to the news. So the first news we have is, of course, the Apple Q2 results. 61.1 billion in revenue, 52.2 million iPhones, 9.1 million iPads sold. So big numbers and everything. It's not a record-setting incredible quarter. It's slightly better than last year, going from 50.8 to 52.2 devices. iPhone sales, sorry. So a little 2 million increases there. The iPads slightly up, but it was better the year before the last. So it's nothing impressive. I won't go over all the numbers, but basically they just make slightly bit more money, slightly bit more sales. The only thing that is down really is the Mac sales. So that's expected, but WWDC at the corner. If you haven't bought a device before Christmas, it's probably now too late because you're saying, okay, let me wait a couple more months. I'll stretch my computer a few more months and I'll get the new one, especially with all the press on the keyboards, the bad keyboards, and all the problems people have with the touch bar. They are pretty eager to see what's going to be the next device. One thing that was interesting, though, one tidbit that Tim Cook revealed is that the iPhone X was the best-selling iPhone for the whole quarter of March. So that's January, February, and March. Those 3 years, those 3 months.
3 years. It flies by.
The time flies by when you're having fun. So those 3 months, it was the best-selling iPhone. So it means that it outsold the iPhone 8 Plus and iPhone 8.
You said every week though, so I don't know what that means.
I think it's the total per week.
I know, but why didn't he say like every month or for the whole quarter? Why does he say every week?
I think that they have the numbers per week, number of device sold per week. That's how they probably calculate stuff with their retail stores.
And if he says per week, it means it's even more of a success, since it's not like the overall of the month is every single week it's sold better, maybe. Yeah,
probably that what it means. Like it's even better than just by month, because let's say for some tax reason or whatever, people rush at the end of the month to buy iPhone 10, and that basically switches this device as being the best one, but it wasn't for the previous 3 weeks. It would be kind of weird, but now it's every week. Like it means nonstop. Like every single week, the iPhone 10 outsold the iPhone 8 and iPhone 8 Plus. One thing I don't know though, do they put the iPhone 8 Plus and iPhone 8 together? Because for me, it's the same device. So does it mean that the iPhone 10 outsold both model, or do they see these three and the iPhone SE as like 4 different devices? That's my
I'm pretty sure it's
question.
4 different,
Okay.
if I'd have to guess.
Yeah. They also mentioned that for the first time, the top tiered iPhone 10, well, the top tiered iPhone model, so the one that's the most expensive, like the biggest capacity, the nicest color and everything, is now the top selling, and it has been for a long time. So they never sold that many of the top model. So people were complaining that the iPhone 10 was too expensive, but it looks like that doesn't stop people from buying it and also buying the higher capacity. So that's something interesting to look at. I just want to quickly circle around back to the rumors that Apple was not selling any iPhones 10 recently. This came from the supply chain. I don't have the article on hand. I just glanced at it last week, but I saw a little table explaining that where does this information come from. It seems to come from Samsung and the OLED panel display business from Samsung basically. And that business, they had a decrease in their productions because they are not being able to sell as many displays as they were expecting. So of course, I think it was Business Insider that took that information and moved it, saying that Apple, being the main customer from Samsung, is the reason behind the display business not selling enough units. But if you look at that post that I had, they had a nice table explaining which devices and what are the numbers estimated by the supply chain of units being sold. And if you look at the numbers, you see that the one that really dropped in terms of numbers is the Samsung Galaxy S9. So the OLED display panel business from Samsung has problems because their own device is not selling as much. So that's one thing that was probably not understood by Business Insider, or maybe distorted, because everybody tries to understand the meaning of stuff. And if you just understand something a little bit crooked, then you get the whole story wrong. But the Apple number of devices from this analyst, they were very high. Like in terms of growth, every quarter to quarter, they are selling more and more. So the business is probably just going as expecting, meaning that Apple did not change their orders of OLED panels. It's just that Samsung probably forecasted to be selling more devices than they were expecting, and they did not reach their numbers. So that's interesting to see that just a little number, just a little different way of putting the sentences together, you get a totally different story.
I found while you were talking the how do you call it, table you were looking for with the.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we'll have it in the show notes. That's going to be fun to look at.
I have it from SlashGear, but it's not the one that we were talking about last week, but it's the same thing.
So last week, or this week? Yeah, this week. We have this weekend, yeah, we had a little anniversary.
So it was the iMac's 20th anniversary, the classic iMac G3. What happened to G1 and G2?
I don't know.
Okay, that's what I never thought about it. I just thought about it yesterday. Like, where are the 2 other ones? And what does G3 mean then? But anyways, it was released. I think it was May 6th or 7th, 98. So it's been exactly 20 years. It's the iMac is seen as like the computer that bring back Apple to profitability, or just bring it back from the dead, if you want. It was the first computer, I think, that was reintroduced by Steve Jobs when he came back from NeXT. And it's also like what people say, like it was the end of the beige boxes and what really set Apple apart and set them up to like do the iPod, the iPhone, and everything that's been done since then. So it's pretty much like the most important device that's ever been released, kind of, sort of, if you want to see it like that. So I remember like seeing the first iMac in my computer classes, and I remember seeing like all this class full of Bondi Blue things and saying, what are these toys? So that's how I was pretty like trained from a young age that Windows was good and Mac was bad because of my parents. But and then I had to use the Macs at school, so I was like, these are toys. These are not like real computers. But anyways, that's how I remember them.
Yeah, it was kind of similar for me. I was doing my was in my CGEP years, and I was doing my my computer science classes, and we had those large beige boxes for developing and everything, which were old, either Pentium 2s or Pentium 3s. But at the same time, when you took a wrong turn in the corridor, you would end up in the design section of the college, and there they had those Bondi blue, whatever you call that thing.
Beach blue.
Beach blue, yeah. Those beach blue iMacs, and they were all new desks, new chairs, new computers. And we were super jealous of them. But yeah, this was, like you said, like a very important stepping stone in the evolution of personal computer. Not just because they switched from beige to color, but also they let go the floppy disk, which was a big unit that everybody was still using, but Apple foresee that it was not required. So they did away with that, and they included a CD-ROM drive inside the computer directly. So that was a good move from them. It was future-proofing the computer. It was also the first one with, I think, 4 USB ports in an all-in-one computer. It also had 2 FireWires 400 and even 2 headphone mini jacks. So if you remember at school, we used to be sometimes paired 2x2 on a computer. And if there was some audio or video thing to listen or to, well, you only had 1 pair of earbuds, you would share the earbuds. But this little guy here had 2 headphone mini jacks. So that was great for that. Otherwise, this little device ran macOS 8.6 all the way to 10.0.4. And then I think that the very, very latest one that you can upgrade to is Tiger, so 10.4.11, which is still impressive given that this OS was released in 2005 and the very first Mac was released in 98. So pretty impressive.
I remember talking about the diskette thing. Like the diskette used to be a required like class supply if you want. And when we switched to this, they had to have like external diskette readers plugged USB to the iMacs. I just remember when you talked about that, because they were all included like this CD drive in the middle, but we couldn't like start burning our projects to CDs all the time. So we still had the diskette with a little USB adapter. So I guess I've been going to Dongle Town since like grade 3.
Nice. Yeah, it was not the best move for students, but it did work well in a networked environment, especially if you had a network card in there and you were able to put your Macs on a network. So that was a great idea. All right, so moving on to once more rumor. Well, not rumor because it's that's the way that John Gruber does it. He has some little birdies who explains him something and tells him some information, but the more and more this guy gets older, the less and less he reveals, and he lets it slide until it's announced, and then he comes back and say that he had information or whatever. So regarding our dear project called Marzipan, according to John Gruber, this will not be released this year in WWDC 2018. It's more a 2019 kind of release. So we might see some stepping stone for this project, but we will not see the whole project for sure. This will be a next year type of project. And the way that this Marzipan would work is the way he explains it. I'm not too sure I understand exactly in this context. Maybe you can chime in if you have more detail. But it's more of a componentized kind of development. So each component has its own set of properties, and you don't know exactly how they're going to be displayed by the system because that's all internal. So you want like a UI button here, or probably just a button, since we're going to skip the UI, UX, or whatever from existing architectures. So you just specify you have a button, you give it some properties, and the system, powered by Marzipan, will make sure that this button displays fine on an iMac, on an iPad, on an iPhone, or whatever. So that's how I can understand it. don't know if you have more stuff to add to this.
No, I think that sums it up.
Okay, good. So it's going to be a different approach to the development, especially for the cross-platform. I'm guessing we might start to see, kind of like when Apple introduced the auto layout thing, and they strongly encouraged us to use auto layout for automatically adjusting to screen size, wink, wink. So maybe we'll see something like that this year. Like, oh, we're going to make a new class of buttons, fields, and whatever. Just start to use those just for fun. And it won't be much difference for you now, but once you're moved to the iOS and macOS from next year, you will get some benefits from that. So your code will already be mostly compatible, and that's going to be a way to spread the work across 2 years instead of rushing from June to September to convert all your apps to Marzipan-powered developer tools.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part of this news is that don't expect it this year, wait till next year.
Yep. All right, so the good folks from Pocket Cast were acquired. So this came out of nowhere, I think. Did you have any tidbits on that beforehand?
No, they didn't call me before to ask if it was okay.
Okay, I thought they were going to ask if the deal was fine.
No, they should have, but they didn't.
Yeah.
So
yeah, at least going to have give me 1% of what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Shifty Jellies, the developer house behind Pocket Cast, were acquired by the good folks at NPM, what is it? NPR, yeah. Too many acronyms. So, by the good folks at NPR. So, this NPR company is the public radio in the States. So, they make a lot of popular podcasts, and they have more and more. They cover a wide range of subjects and ways to play with audio. So, it's very interesting to see that these guys, they don't really want analytics the way that big companies usually want. They just want to make good stories, and they want those good stories to reach people. And since that's a publicly owned company, they are working with the money from advertisers, and they are working from donations from the public. So their business aspect is quite different from if, let's say, for example, Vox acquired Pocket Cast. They would be more interesting into getting a lot more statistics and analytics from those podcast plays, but not really NPR. So I think it's a good match. They don't, of course, as when it goes with acquisitions, nothing will change for now. Everything will remain the same, but still, we'll have to see in the coming months how this is going to happen. I think Shifty Jelly is 2-person, right? It's a 2-person team.
He says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Five people are all joining the new venture.
Yeah, but the 2 main guys, I think they're getting some exec role or whatever. So maybe this Pocket Cast will be a subdivision of NPR, and they might be the menu managers for that. So they're still there. They're still handling that application. There might be some new features that will be requested by NPR. So we'll see how this goes. But I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. For users of the apps, things will eventually change. So that's a given. You cannot expect an acquisition to remain the exact same thing. There's a reason behind that. The reason could be as simple as securing a percentage of the market so that, let's say, Overcast and Pocket Cast together, they have a big enough percentage so that they can steer the market in a certain direction, which is more privacy focused than having tracking pixels everywhere and switch ads mid-play depending on where you are and stuff like that. So that's going to be interesting to see.
There's also a nice blog post that's saying it's called The Next Chapter, so it's explaining everything for us.
Yeah, it's pretty nicely done. There's a bunch of questions, and I like the tone. Very humoristic, very funny. So that's interesting. You don't learn a lot. I think that's why they use humor here. I just paid yesterday. What's going to happen? Nothing changed. Is everything changing? Nothing is changing. Are you going to change everything? Nothing is changing. So it all comes down to that for now. But it's an acquisition, so we'll have to wait and see.
I like that everybody's been saying, been asking Marco Arment on Twitter, did you get an offer? Did you get an offer for his app called Overcast? That's also a podcast player.
Did he reply?
Yeah, he said no.
Okay.
And he didn't know anything about this.
Yeah, because Overcast is special because now he has its own large ad serving system. So that is very specific to Marco and drastically increased the value of Overcast because you have the player itself and you have the whole ad business. And if you look at an ad business and also an app, comment c'est ça? If you look at any business, you have to look at the revenues it generates and make a smart calculation on how much you think this can grow to, and that's usually the price you're willing to pay for that thing. So let's say that Overcast, the app, brings in, let's say a round number, 50K per year. Then you offer the developer 150K. So he has 3 years in one single shot, and he's happy. He's going to sell. But now Marco is selling ads with Overcast, and that ad business is probably like $1 million per month. So if you go with the whole thing across a year, then the whole revenue for the year maybe is closer to 12, 13 million. Well, then it's not the same thing. If you want to offer interesting money to that person that makes a steady revenue of at least 10 million per year, you need to give him 15, 20, 30 million. And that's a way bigger purchase than what they probably offered digitally for Pocket Cast.
And also Pocket Cast is available on Android, and Overcast isn't and won't be.
Yeah, exactly. Different market, kind of. I don't know if that justifies a lot more revenues. There's a lot of Android device out there, but you need to make sure that that number still makes sense. But nonetheless, I'm not surprised that Marco didn't have any offer, because the initial offer must have been would need to be a lot bigger.
I always forget about this, like selling ads part. This is worth like a lot of money.
Yep, very, very much. All right, so moving on to a small Nintendo news. This came out yesterday. I just got the email from Nintendo PR about the online service for Nintendo Switch. So we knew for a little while that a system was being planned, a system that would allow us to use some online features. It was pretty vague. We didn't know if it was just backup of your save games on the cloud, easy if you want to switch consoles, or if it was something else. But now we have the details. So it's going to be either a individual subscription, which will be $5 per month. Those prices are in Canadian dollars. I didn't have the Nintendo PR for the US yet, so probably a little less for the US. So 1 month is $5, 3 months is $10, and the whole year is $25. So that's for a single Nintendo account. What they're trying to push with this thing is they're trying to push a family account, which is $45 per year for the whole family, which means up to 7 Nintendo accounts probably grouped as a family, which is, I think, not possible until now or until this is released. So we'll be able... Right now, what happens is you have a single Nintendo account set per console, and depending on the game, you can have different characters if you want, and that's usually where I put my kids' names, so they have their own save games. And I think that's up to 6 or 7 per game. So it's enough so that you can play as a regular size family. But now this maybe will allow us to have a separate account per person. So if ever, let's say, my son gets his own Switch, then he would be able to use his own account and get his save games back. Because right now, if we break or lose the Switch, we'll lose everything because we have no cloud backup. So what comes with this subscription? So you have, of course, the cloud backup of your save game. So you can archive your save games and your personal data in the cloud, so you can easily switch between consoles. I don't think it's going to be something that you can switch, like if you go to your friend's house, you log in your account and you have your save game. I don't think that's going to be the same thing. It's mostly just for archiving purposes. Some games already allow some online features. I'm thinking that they're going to be moving those online features to that online service. So you need to purchase that service to continue to play online with Splatoon and other games like that. There's also going to be the NES games, which will be available for you to play. This is special because it's not just regular emulated games from the 80s and 90s. It's actually redesigned games so that they have online capabilities. So I don't know what all this really entails, but it's simply that you have the games which were updated for a more modern era, and that's probably why that they only released 20 at first. More to come in the future. It's the regular games that you were expecting, kind of the same one that we had on the NES Classic that was released 2 years ago. So that's going to be interesting to see if they're going to add Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 in the future. I really hope so, because we didn't have any virtual console on the Switch, which is something we had on the Wii U and the Wii. So it was fun to play old games like that. But this time the games will be different, so I'll still have to see. Hopefully they don't break the games too much and just add maybe top scores or challenges, or I don't know. We'll have to see. So all this for $25 per year in my situation, since I only have one console and everything's on the same console. I don't plan on creating accounts for my kids yet, unless they have eventually their very own console. So if my son has his own, let's say 3DS, he's gonna probably require his own account. But for now, they're all piggybacking on my account, so that's fine by me. I manage the purchases and everything, so that's good. So $25 Canadian per year, not a big deal, especially if we have new games and we have a cloud backup. That's going to be interesting.
I saw a Switch last night for like the first time in the wild, if you want, other than the train.
Oh yeah, okay. Because I thought that was weird, because I'm seeing them like almost on a weekly basis everywhere.
I used to see them in the metro, but I don't see them in the train anymore.
Okay,
they're a lot bigger than I remember.
Well, yeah, they look bigger from far, but it's kind of like the the iPhone Plus size. Once you have it in your hands, it's super tiny. But if you see it in somebody else's hand, then it's super large.
Because it was a kid walking around like in IKEA, so it really looked weird.
Yeah, well, yeah, if it's a kid, it's going to be especially bigger in his little hands. But yeah, the console is still very small. The Joy-Con on each side, to my experience, are too small for my big man hands. If I use the Pro controller, which is the standard wireless controller that looks like the one you have on a Xbox or a PS, this is much bigger. Like the joystick are bigger, the buttons are bigger, the handles are bigger, so everything is like more adult size, if you want. Whereas the console itself is super tiny. So, and I do have some strain on my hands when I play for over an hour and a half. I start to feel some pain. So that's why I usually switch either the game to be on the television, for example, and use that little adapter where you slide in the Joy-Cons, or basically just move to the Pro controller, which is a lot more comfortable and a lot more precise, because the joystick is bigger, so you have a bigger number of millimeters from, let's say, Z-axis or Y-axis. So no, X or Y-axis. So it's easier to aim and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I feel is it just me, or kids are like asking for iPads instead of Switches in general?
Well, it was the case before the Switch came out, for sure, because there was nothing really affordable. Well, there was the 3DS and the DS line of products, which was great, but it's not the same type of investment, because it was like $129 type of purchase. In the States, maybe $99. So that's the kind of thing you can easily get your kid for Christmas, and it's not $500 for like an iPad. So I think that until kids basically ran out of games to play on those console, they were still okay. But now they ran out of games, so they're asking for an iPad. But now the iPad mini, if they got it, now they're crying because it's too slow. If they got the big one, then good for them. But there's not that many games. Like if you look at the great games that come out on iOS nowadays, I don't think it's amazing. There's a couple of games per year, but nothing like it was in the heyday when you could release like a Angry Bird and sell like 20 million copies in the first trimester or something, first quarter. So that's not the same thing, I think. Whereas the Switch, since it came out, it's been a year and a month right now, so 13 months. Especially from Nintendo, they were amazingly prepared for that console, and they released a lot of games, a lot of first parties, a lot of great games, and just Zelda and Mario Odyssey. These are just two great games that have lots and lots of replayability, and the DLCs also for those. So you still have more challenges and more stuff to do, and that's just two games. And then you start to add new franchises. Like there's one with where you have a robot and you punch, and that's different and novel. And there's a bunch more. I think that they released at least a dozen game in a year for the Switch from Nintendo. And then the cool thing is that they embraced the independent developers. So there's, if you go on their online store basically for the games, you can get like crazily good games that are iPad-like, but for like $5, $7, $12. So you have a lot of things that you can play. So right now, I don't even want to go look for that because I don't have time to play that much. And I know that there's a bunch of games there that I should go and buy and play and have fun, but trying to control myself a bit because I don't have enough time to play all of these games.
And what about your kids? Are they asking for like Switch games or just give me an iPad or?
Well,
nothing?
Now the big trend is PUBG and Fortnite. So there were rumors that Fortnite would come to the Switch. So my son, having friends at school that have their own computers, they are always constantly speaking about Fortnite, and he was saying, okay, can we get Fortnite? And even asked me like an Xbox just to get Fortnite. I'm like, no, kid, that's not how life works. You don't buy daddy won't buy you a console just for one game, and especially not that type of game. So other than that, he wanted Minecraft, and he got it as a gift from one of his friends for his birthday on the Wii U, not on the Switch. So he played that a lot. They did the whole game, and then they started to do their own creations. They had fun with the little mining cart, so that they would do like des montagnes russes, no? Roller coasters. So they had, I would say, months of fun with this one. Now they're back to Zelda. They started the master mode, so they started to play with the hard mode basically, and they're pretty good. So they were able to go over and beat Ganon again. They kind of went a bit fast. They didn't explore everything. But now that the DLC are available, and there's one that's pretty cool. If you do 3 challenges per bosses, and there's 3 bosses, so that's 9 challenges, then you can get a motorcycle. So kind of a fast travel across the land in a motorcycle. So that's going to be interesting. So they're hard at work doing that right now. But no, they don't ask for many games. They don't know many games, I think. So for now, I'm pretty safe. We got Mario Odyssey. They didn't really hooked on this one. They were more Minecraft at this time, so it was more for me. But yeah, nothing on the radar for now. We'll have to see what comes out next. All right, let's move on to your favorite corner.
The rumor corner.
All right, so the very first news we have is the long time coming MacBook Air refresh, which people were expecting to come this year, probably at WWDC. Well, now we have a rumor from Digitime, which is not the most reliable, so take this with a grain of salt, as they say. They say that Apple informed supply chain partner that the mass production of this new notebook will not kick off until the second half of the year. So does this mean July 1st and for a August or September release? Because that would be the ideal scenario if you want to get the back to school thing. Because that's not the kind of device you have to release in October, because if you do that, you kind of missed like your most lucrative market, which is cheaper MacBooks usually are aimed to students. So I don't know. What do you think about this?
The MacBook Air, I don't know why I'd even still sell it. It doesn't have a Retina display, and it's still the one they sell the most. So it just, like, get us a new one, please, fast. I have a friend that has an old MacBook Air and he wants to replace it, but I'm trying to tell him to wait, to not get the MacBook Escape that's expensive or anything, and like wait for the next MacBook Air. But we're running out of time.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if there's something planned for, let's say, August, September, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear about it at WWDC. Worst case scenario, we only have like a little video and a few specs. That will be enough. People who were waiting for that device to get announced will have at least something to hold on to and wait until that release date. I think it doesn't make sense to be selling this one now. The old one, I mean. It's been a long time since they should have removed it, but Apple being Apple, if it still sells, why why remove it? It's kind of like the AirPod Extreme, AirPod line. Like they were still selling pretty well, I'm guessing, until recently, and even the whole team was moved in November 2016. So there was really nothing going on with that product, but it was still selling. So keep on making it, keep on selling it, and it's not a bad device. Like most houses were okay with an AirPod Extreme. And the AirPort Express were used and beloved by people who wanted to have an airplayable speaker around the house. So you would plug this in the wall, you would put a 3.5 millimeter cable all the way to your speaker, and that would make an airplayable speaker. You can send the music room by room, so there's no multi-room, but it was still working. So the bad part about the whole removal of that product line is that these AirPort Express probably will never get the AirPlay 2, and people were hoping at one point to be able to reuse their existing speakers and AirPort Express to make a multi-room setup, kind of like Sonos, but with dumb speakers and AirPort Express. But since the group was dismantled a long time ago, and now Apple is completely killing that business, it won't happen. So for that MacBook Air, I'm sure it's going to be interesting, and we're going to see something, at least just a little video at WWDC.
Also, there's a new rumor about the charging cable for the next iPhone. Who cares about this? I don't even know why people are like leaking this, but they found like not leaks, but design documents about like the charging brick, and it might include USB-C. So I guess USB-C to Lightning, and they're saying it's going to be 18 watts. I don't know. The current iPhone one is 8 watts or 5 watts. The
5
iPad
watts,
is
yeah.
10, and then the big iPad is 12, and the MacBook is 12. So this 18 would be huge, no?
Yeah. So right now you can use the 12 watts with your iPhone, and it charges super fast. But in this case, if you get an 18 watt, that could mean you can get from 0 to 50% in about 30 minutes. So think of this as, right now, if you plug your iPhone into your car and you have the GPS running and you have, let's say, 2 amps of power going to that device, so that's a 10 watt, you can recharge your phone while having the screen lit and having it use the GPS and everything. But in this case, this would charge as fast as if you were plugged into the wall while being used. So it's an increased drastically on the performance. So if you go from 10 to 18, that's almost double the speed, double the wattage. So that could be very interesting for people who have intense use. Think of me, for example, if I film something with my phone in Filmic Pro, and I do this with the extreme mode, which is high bitrate mode, well, my phone can go from 100% to 0% in like 15, 20 minutes, half an hour at most, if I stop and start recording. So that's quite extensive for a phone. But if I can be somewhere where I can just charge it back half an hour to get 50%, then I get another 15 minutes of recording. So that could be quite useful. So that's just a rumor. We'll have to see if this is really from Apple and not just from some other company. But if they allow the iPhones to use that much power, then I'm going to be impressed.
Yeah, it's like the MacBook charger now, the MacBook One or Adorable or whatever they call it, right?
Yeah, that could also benefit a lot from it. But at 18 watts, could you charge? No, you cannot charge the 13-inch MacBook Pro. You need more than that.
I think the MacBook Pro comes with an 23.
Yeah, 23. So in theory, if you do very light use, and let's say you dim your screen a bit, you could potentially maybe have a ongoing cycle where you consume what you're recharging, so you can stay the same percentage like steadily. So that could work, but barely. I wouldn't get that kind of charger for your laptop unless you plan on letting it charge overnight, and that's like 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. Then you could get from 0 to 100% for your MacBook.
Okay, never mind. It comes with the 61 watt charger.
61? Okay, I'll forget it. You're never going to be able to power the MacBook while using it with this 18 watt. So it's a different game, as they say.
And the 15-inch comes with an 87.
Yeah, that's a big one. I remember this one. All right, so that's it for episode 89 of the RGBA podcast. You can find us online at RGBA.fm. You can find us on Twitter at _RGBAfm. I am on Twitter at Valia, VALLIERES.
And I'm Tyler Menard, TYLERMENARD.
Have a nice week.
Have a nice week.